Nonviolent Day of Defiance is scheduled for Saturday as the ultimate counter-programming against Donald Trump's trying to co-opt the American flag, co-opt the U.S. Army, and have all his toys on display for his birthday with a ridiculous, overwrought 250th anniversary of the Army at a $50 million price tag at least for the American taxpayer, not counting how we're going to have to fix all the roads after these 20 tons, 60 tons of tanks hit the street. But we have an act of defiance, a day of defiance. It's scheduled. It is organized. It is being led by organizations like 5051, 50 states, 50 protests, one movement with a kickoff in Philadelphia, the cradle of our democracy and of liberty, with 1,500 locations around the United States and another 300 around the world. No kings. No kings. And that is the effect of counter-programming. As governors in purpley and red states get a little bit of a trigger finger, little itchy trigger finger, and are starting to mobilize their National Guard to avoid Donald Trump doing it for them because they're obeying in advance, which is a win for the king named Donald Trump, who during a press conference that I'll show you said, "I'm not a king. I got to go through hell to get anything done." I'm Michael Popok. Let's talk about the hellscape, what we can do about it with a plan of action today on Saturday here on Legal AF. 5501 also led nonviolent protest around the country in and around the time of Law Day, May 1st, on the books for over 50 years. But this one more, when you have a rogue, lawless president in power, Law Day takes on a special meaning. When you have a fascist wannabe who's attempted successfully so far, despite court intervention, to take over the state militia, to try to embarrass the Democratic governor of California, and to try to take over California and roll in the troops, the military, against its own people, you gotta have a No King's Day. You have to have street protests. We talk on Legal AF a lot about what can we do. Voting, yes. Voting registration, avoiding voting suppression laws. That all has to be done in order to be prepared for the midterms and beyond. But street protests, nonviolent street protests, are really, really important. And I love the fact that the 5051 movement leaders have decided they're not even going to counter-program in DC, right? Let him have, they're going to cede him his totalitarian parade. But they're going to take to the streets every place else in America that matters. And they're going to be led off and kicked off by a giant kickoff in Philadelphia. Here's what the leaders of this organization had to say. We're not gathering to feed his ego, which would, I agree with them, which would happen if they were in DC. We're building a movement that leaves him behind. The flag doesn't belong to President Trump. It belongs to us. We're showing up everywhere he isn't to say no to thrones, no to crowns, and no to kings. Rule of Law Day, May 1 was one thing, where Supreme Court justices took time out to tell us that they were protesting this attack on the judiciary and on law firms and the rule of law. But look how far May 1 to June 14. California has put everything in an entirely new perspective through the prism of California. Just as Israel's attack with Donald Trump's support has on Iran has put geopolitical and financial issues into a new light, right? It's totally thrown over the game board, and we've got to have to rebuild and start again as our country is less secure today than it was yesterday. And Donald Trump having his minions and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State in name only, take to the podium and say, we didn't know anything about this. This is without our cooperation. That's a lie. How do we know? Because Donald Trump said it was a lie. Donald Trump said he was read in about the plans. He knew about the plans, and let's call a spade a spade. Okay? There's no way Israel attacks with 300 missiles Iran's nuclear capacity without the U.S. support. And of course, Donald Trump came forward and said, yes, they have lethality of weapons, and so do we, and we're going to support them and all of that. Okay. Change the world as we knew it from yesterday to today. Think about this protest planned before California. I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. Donald Trump's oppressive attempt to crack down and suppress First Amendment expression in California and try to embarrass Democrats and show that we're in favor of lawlessness and they aren't? Or was he doing his own counter-programming in advance of No King's Day? But now you see the obeying aspect of this going on. The Missouri governor, on his own, preemptively, decided to mobilize his National Guard, not because there's been any credible threat, but he doesn't want there to be. So in advance, he's putting on the streets, boots on the ground, National Guard to police their communities. How does that make you feel when you walk by one of your neighbors wearing full battle fatigues and an M16 and maybe a riot helmet and who else knows what else? How does that make you feel about America? Is that the America on Flag Day that we all celebrate? Is that our brand of patriotism? Or has it been hijacked by Donald Trump? This thing that's going on, this disgusting thing that's going on, depraved in Washington on Saturday, related to the U.S. Army, where Donald Trump has hijacked the U.S. Army and forced it to sing for its supper, to roll out the 60-ton M1 Abrams tanks and roll them down Pennsylvania Avenue so Donald Trump can have that as a backdrop, like some modern day Patton or Mussolini. This King's Day celebration, this King's Day protest is important. They asked Donald Trump if he knew what the King's Day was, No King's Day, and the protest movement. And he had this to say in a clip.
There are several No Kings protests planned across the country on Saturday as well. What are your thoughts on those?
What are they called? No Kings?
No Kings.
I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get stuff approved. A king would say, I'm not going to get this. A king would have never had the California mandate to even be talking to him. He wouldn't have to call up Mike Johnson and Thune and say, fellas, you got to pull this off, and after years we get it done. No, we're not a king. We're not a king at all. Thank you very much.
Well, I feel sorry for Donald Trump. It's very hard to rein in his fascist tendencies and to do so in the courts of law and have to file several hundred lawsuits in the first 160, 170 days and obtain a 96% batting average and win overwhelmingly in the appellate courts and even win more often than not in the Supreme Court, to rein in his abuse of power and his lurching from one constitutional crisis to the next. Yeah, I feel sorry for him. He's got to go through hell to get things done. I can tell you the hellscape that he's generated for the American people has been tough to live through. Yeah. So we put all the pieces together. Purple states and red states already obeying Donald Trump, taking over their own militia because they want to avoid what happened in D.C. Against that backdrop and the attack on the sovereignty of California and therefore an attack on the union by a sitting president, the very union. He's the anti-Abraham Lincoln. He's anti a lot of things, but he's the anti-Abraham Lincoln. And using the National Guard to enforce his fascist tendencies, not to support civil liberties, not to enforce civil rights, not to reconstruct the Union. That is now the backdrop and has put new and turbocharged for me the need for us to protest in the streets peacefully, to express our First Amendment rights, to peaceably assemble, to have redress of grievances to the government. And to make the government uncomfortable, not through violent means, but to make them uncomfortable in the marketplace of ideas. And to get up on our soapbox and to join with our fellow neighbor in fellowship against the Trump administration. I'm going to follow up with other reporting about No King's Day and the result. We'll do it here on Legal AF. We'll do it on the Midas Touch Network. So I'm Michael Popok. I'm with you. I join with you. I'm shoulder to shoulder with you. I am standing next to you, and I feel you're standing next to me as we together are in resistance and opposition and defiance on No King's Day. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.